High school is supposed to be a safe place, a world of fluorescent lights, squeaking sneakers on linoleum, and the dull drone of a teacher's lecture. It's a bubble. And in that bubble, the biggest monsters are supposed to be pop quizzes and social rejection. The adults are the guardians, the protectors, the janitors, the teachers, the staff. They're just part of the scenery. They're fixtures. You don't really see them, not until one of them decides to see you. I learned that lesson my senior year, and it broke the bubble forever. His name was Mr. Abernathy, and he was our school's night janitor. Mr. Abernathy was an institution. He'd been working at Northwood High since my parents were students. He was a quiet, stooped man in his late 60s with a slow, shuffling walk and a ring of keys that announced his presence from a hallway away. To most of us, he was just the janitor, a ghost who cleaned up our messes after we were gone. I was the editor of the school newspaper, which meant I was often one of the last students to leave the building, working late into the evening in the cramped, windowless newspaper office. And that's when I started to notice him. It began with small things. He'd be mopping the hall, and as I passed, he'd say, "Nice new shoes, Emily," even though he was across the hall and I was wearing them for the first time. Another time, as I was leaving, he said, "Don't forget that history project is due Friday." I was shocked. How did he know about my project? "I hear things," he'd said, with a wink, a strange, knowing little smile on his face. "This old school talks to me." My friends and I brushed it off. Creepy old Abernathy, we'd laugh. Harmlessly weird. That's what we thought. The real shift happened one Tuesday night. I was working on the final layout for the paper and realized I'd left a crucial flash drive in my locker. It was almost 9 p.m. I figured I'd have to come in early the next day, but then I remembered there was a master key for all the lockers kept in the main office for emergencies. I went down the long, silent hallway to the office. The door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. I pushed it open, expecting it to be empty. Mr. Abernathy was inside. He was standing behind the secretary's desk, a single desk lamp illuminating a large open binder in front of him. It was the Student Emergency Contact and Records file. He wasn't cleaning, he was reading. He looked up when I entered, his eyes wide with a surprise that quickly morphed into a thin, tight smile. "Just checking the cleaning schedule, Emily," he said, closing the binder with a loud snap. "Can't be too careful." His excuse was flimsy. The cleaning schedules were on a bulletin board in the custodial closet. My heart started to beat a little faster. "I just need the master key for my locker. I forgot something." Of course," he said, shuffling over to the key box. "We can't have you without your work, can we?" He handed me the key, his cold, dry fingers brushing against mine for a moment too long. The feeling was like a spider crawling on my skin. I got my flash drive and returned the key, and Abernathy was still in the office, just standing there, watching me. The smile never left his face. The incident stuck with me. A sense of wrongness, of a boundary being crossed. I started being more careful, packing up and leaving earlier. But a week later, I was forced to stay late to finish a college application. I was in the library, the only student there. The librarian had already left for the night, leaving me to lock up behind her. Around 8:30 p.m., I dropped my pen. It rolled under one of the heavy, dark wood study carrels. I got on my hands and knees to retrieve it. As I reached under the dusty table, my fingers brushed against something small and metallic taped to the underside of the wood. It was a tiny camera lens, no bigger than a shirt button. A spy cam. It was pointed directly at the chair I'd been sitting at. my breath caught in my throat. I looked under the other carrels. They all had one. A cold, sickening dread poured through me. Who would do this? And then I heard it. The faint, rhythmic jingle-jangle of keys coming down the hallway towards the library. Mr. Abernathy. Panic seized me. He was the only one with a key to this room after hours. I scrambled out from under the table and dove behind a tall, rotating bookshelf in the darkest corner of the library, my body trembling. The library doors opened, and his slow, shuffling footsteps echoed on the tile. He wasn't pushing a cleaning cart. He was just walking. I peeked through a gap in the books. He walked directly to the carrel I had been sitting at. He knelt down, his back to me, and reached under it. He was checking the camera. Then he stood up and walked over to my table, where my backpack sat. He unzipped it. He didn't just rummage through it. He carefully, methodically, took out each item. My wallet, my student ID, my planner, and then my house key. He held it up in the dim light, a look of quiet, possessive satisfaction on his face. He wasn't just a weird old man. He was a collector of our private lives. He knew my name, he knew my schedule, and now he had my house key. My mind raced. How long had he been doing this? What other rooms had cameras? What had he seen? He put everything back in my bag, zipped it up, and shuffled out of the library, locking the door behind him. I stayed hidden for what felt like an hour, too terrified to move. I finally crept out, my legs shaking, and used the emergency exit to get out of the building. I ran all the way home. The police investigated. What they found in his custodial closet in the boiler room was a nightmare. Decades of trophies, stolen jewelry, photographs taken from unlocked lockers, diaries, and tapes. Hours and hours of tapes from hidden cameras placed all over the school, in the girls' locker room, in the library, even in the guidance counselor's office. He had files on hundreds of students, past and present, filled with details so specific and intimate it made the detectives sick. He was a predator who had made our school his own private hunting ground for 40 years, hiding in the one place no one ever looks: plain sight. The bubble wasn't just broken, it was shattered. And I learned that the most disturbing monsters are the ones who hold the keys. For some of us, school isn't just a place to learn, it's a sanctuary. For me, it was the music wing. I was a band kid, a trumpeter, and the shabby, soundproofed practice rooms in the basement of my ancient high school were my home. The school was built in the 1920s, a brick monolith full of ghost stories, and the oldest, most persistent story belonged to the music wing, the legend of Piano Girl. The story went that in the 1950s, a gifted but deeply troubled pianist named Lillian practiced obsessively in practice room 4. One night, distraught over a failed audition, she took her own life in that very room. Ever since, students and teachers have reported things. The faint sound of a Chopin nocturne drifting down the empty halls at night, the heavy lid of the grand piano in the main room slamming shut on its own. Mostly, it was just spooky talk, a story we'd use to scare the freshmen. I never believed it, until the night I was forced to. I had a major audition for a state-level scholarship. My solo was a notoriously difficult trumpet concerto, and I needed every extra minute of practice I could get. My band director, Mr. Jensen, a kind man who understood my passion, gave me a key and permission to practice late, long after the school was empty. "Just lock up when you leave," he'd said, "and don't pay any attention to the old building's groans." That night, the school was a tomb. The only sounds were my own footsteps echoing in the cavernous hallways as I made my way to the basement. The music wing was even quieter, the thick walls absorbing all sound. I chose practice room 2, a tiny windowless cube, and got to work. For an hour, it was just me and my trumpet. I was lost in the music, the notes filling the small space. I was in the middle of a difficult passage when I heard it. A single, soft, discordant piano chord. It came from the room next to mine, practice room 3. I stopped playing, my own notes dying in the air. I held my breath, listening. Silence. I must have imagined it. The pipes, the building settling, Mr. Jensen's groans. I raised my trumpet to my lips again. And then it came again, a simple, heartbreakingly sad melody, played on an out-of-tune piano. Each note was hesitant, like a memory trying to form. My blood went cold. I knew for a fact that I was the only person in the entire wing. Mr. Jensen had locked the main doors behind me. I slowly put my trumpet down and crept out of my practice room. The hallway was empty, lit by a single buzzing fluorescent light. The sad piano music was clearer now, drifting softly from under the door of practice room 3. My rational mind was desperately trying to find an explanation. A forgotten tape recorder? A radio? But the sound was too real, too present. I crept to the door of room 3. It had a small square window in it, reinforced with wire mesh. My heart hammering, I peeked inside. The room was dark, but there was a faint, shimmering luminescence in the center. An almost transparent, human-like shape was sitting at the old upright piano against the far wall. I couldn't make out any features, just a vague outline of a girl with long hair, her hands moving over the keys. She wasn't a reflection. She was in the room. As I watched, paralyzed, the shimmering head turned slowly, and even though it was featureless, I felt it look directly at me. A wave of pure, primal fear washed over me. I stumbled backwards, away from the door, and in that instant, the main doors to the entire music wing, the heavy double fire doors at the top of the stairs, slammed shut with a deafening boom that echoed through the basement. I was trapped. The piano music stopped. The silence that followed was 1,000 times worse. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind screaming. Then I heard a new sound, the slow, agonizing creak of the door to practice room 3, opening. I didn't wait to see what came out. I ran. I bolted for the only other place I could think of, the large instrument storage closet at the far end of the hall. I threw open the door, dove inside among the dusty cellos and bass drums, and pulled it shut, plunging myself into near total darkness. I dared not breathe. I heard it in the main room now, a soft, dragging footstep, like someone with a limp or someone who didn't quite remember how to walk. It shuffled around the room, accompanied by a soft, heartbroken weeping sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing myself further into the corner, surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 old concerts. I stayed there all night, listening to the weeping and the shuffling, too terrified to even cry. The next morning, the early custodian unlocked the main doors. He found me huddled in the closet, a complete mess. He said he'd heard stories, but he'd never seen anything. I quit the band that day. I gave up the scholarship. I couldn't set foot in that basement again. The melody she was playing, I can still hear it in my head sometimes. It's a sad, unfinished tune, and I know, deep down, in that silent, lonely basement, she's still in that room, waiting for someone else to stay late and help her finish it.
Most of the time, the monsters in school are other kids. The bullies, the cliques. The teachers are the safe ones, the constants. They're supposed to guide you, to teach you about the world. But our long-term substitute history teacher, Mr. Graves, wasn't interested in teaching us about the world. He was interested in teaching us how to survive its end, and his classroom was the recruiting ground. Our regular teacher, Mrs. Gable, a woman so beloved she was practically a school mascot, had to take an extended medical leave. In her place, we got Mr. Graves. At first, he was a breath of fresh air. He was young, charismatic, and passionate. He didn't just teach history, he performed it. He'd leap onto desks to reenact battles, his voice booming through the classroom. We were all captivated. But after a few weeks, his passion began to reveal its dark underside. His lessons became fixated on one theme: societal collapse. The Black Death, the fall of Rome, the Bronze Age collapse. He'd describe the famines, the plagues, the wars with a morbid, almost gleeful detail. He started talking about the fragility of our own world, how one bad solar flare, one engineered virus, and all of this, he'd gesture at the school, the town, would be gone. He started an after-school history club. I joined, thinking it would be more of his exciting lectures. It wasn't. It was more like a boot camp for the apocalypse. He taught us how to filter water, how to tie tourniquets, how to read a compass. It was weird, but he framed it as living history, and the school administration, thrilled with his engagement, praised him for it. The real shift came when he started separating the students in his mind, the strong and the weak. He'd praise kids who were athletic or questioned authority, calling them survivors. He'd subtly mock students who were more academic or sensitive, calling them liabilities. The history club became his inner circle of survivors. And the atmosphere in that club started to feel less like a hobby and more like a cult. I started to get scared. I tried to quit the club, telling him I needed more time for my other studies. His friendly, charismatic persona vanished in an instant. He cornered me after class, his body blocking the doorway. He said, "You don't just leave, Jessica. We're a unit. We look out for each other. When the tether frays, we won't have the luxury of quitting. Leaving is weakness, and we purge weakness." He grabbed my arm, his grip shockingly tight. I could feel the heat and anger radiating from him. He held it for a terrifying second before letting go, his charming smile snapping back into place as another student walked past the door. He said, "Think about it," cheerfully. I ran out of there, my arm throbbing. I tried to tell my parents, the school counselor. They all said the same thing. He was an unconventional teacher, passionate. There was no concrete proof of anything wrong, just my word against the most popular new teacher in school. I became an outcast. The other members of the history club, my former friends, would watch me in the hallways with cold, distant eyes. They'd whisper when I walked past. They were his now. The climax of this slow burn nightmare was the club's planned overnight historical reenactment lock-in at the school. I wasn't going, obviously, but my best friend, Maya, was still in deep. She thought I was overreacting. She promised she'd text me if anything got weird. At 1 a.m., my phone buzzed, waking me from a restless sleep. It was a string of frantic texts from Maya. "He's locked us in. We're in the gym. He barricaded the doors. He's got something in a canister. He's talking about the final lesson, the purge. Jessica, I'm scared. Call help." I called 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. I explained the situation, trying to make the dispatcher understand that this wasn't a prank, that my teacher was unhinged and had a dozen students trapped. It took the police 20 minutes to get there. 20 minutes where I sat staring at my phone, praying for another text that never came. The police reports filled in the rest. They found the gym doors chained and blocked from the inside with bleachers. Inside, Mr. Graves was standing on a podium in the center of the gym delivering a wild, rambling sermon to a group of terrified, crying teenagers. He was talking about the imminent collapse, how they were the chosen few, how they had to prove their strength by passing a final test. He was holding a small, pressurized canister. He told the students it was a purifying agent, an airborne virus he'd engineered that would only spare the strong. The SWAT team broke down the doors. Graves was taken without a fight, seemingly surprised that the outside world still existed. The canister, it turned out, was just a theatrical smoke bomb, but in that moment, to those kids, it was real. He was having a complete psychotic breakdown, and he wanted to take his chosen students with him into his delusion. The school tried to sweep it under the rug. Mr. Graves was quietly committed to a psychiatric facility. But we all knew. We knew how close we came. I learned that the most dangerous people aren't the ones who use fists or weapons. They're the ones who use words. The ones who can take a safe place like a classroom and turn it into an echo chamber for their own madness, convincing you that the only monster you should be afraid of is the world outside the door they just locked.
Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them over at the comments section, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon. Good night.